Suddenly, talking about travel was a taboo and viewed as insensitive during a global pandemic. My story begins in 2016. I was working at a B2B events agency within the sales team. It was a great job. I got to travel to amazing destinations such as Dubai, Paris, Cancun, and even Las Vegas. It was the kind of job I wanted to mix my passion for travel with degree skills of events management. I documented my trips via Instagram and started getting attraction. As an act of travel, we all buy souvenirs and bring them home. And that's how I had an idea to create something that I could bring to the trips with me. I talked with a friend who was creative and she helped me with a logo. And that's how I created my first t shirt. I wore it every time I traveled for my actual job and shared it on my Instagram. I started getting messages from people asking where they could purchase the t shirts. With little help or guidance, I sourced printing suppliers, opened an e commerce shop via Etsy, and without a business plan, I had started my first business. For some time, I managed to have both my job at the agency and my apparel brand. I love being involved in many projects to expand my knowledge and challenge my skills. So in 2017, a friend approached me to start a project organizing events to empower and recognize young entrepreneurs in London. I jumped on that opportunity as this was something I was passionate about. We successfully managed three events, but sadly, started problems started arising, and we no longer believed in the same goals. Therefore, that partnership came to an end. Fortunately, interest was increasing for my apparel brand. However, I was no longer feeling fulfilled in my job at the agency. There was no room for me to progress professionally, and having two jobs was time consuming. I started getting exhausted, I was having anxiety attacks, and my motivation was pulling me towards building my brand. That's when I decided in 2018 to quit my job. At the beginning, I remember feeling free, but at the same time in disbelief that I had said goodbye to a 6 year routine and my first ever job since graduating from university. With little time to digest my freedom, led me to taking my first ever solo trip. I visited Cuba, I went to Morocco, and it was during these trips that I got inspired. I wanted to organize group trips. I thought it was the best companion for my apparel brand. So when I got back home, I was going to put this plan into action. However, it wasn't that easy as I expected, actually. I was in shock for a little while. I didn't know how to start in terms of organizing the trips and where to find clients. I no longer had a security of a paycheck and now had to find income, whether it was looking for grants or clients. At a certain point, reality struck. I had to sell my car, change my lifestyle, limit my spending. After all, I had a mortgage and other responsibilities to take care of. But in 2019, I managed to organize my first trip. It was a day trip. This trip was formed as a test after getting messages on social media from followers wanting to travel with me. I put out a tweet and the dates and destination and waited to see who would respond. I felt nervous and very doubtful in case the strategy failed. However, to my surprise, this attracted interest, and six girls ended up coming on the trip with me. We were all strangers who connected via a mutual interest for travel and trying out new experiences. As the group lead, I put pressure on myself to make sure the group bonded and enjoyed their time, as their experience traveling with me would be a reflection on my brand. The trip was a success. As we documented our experience on social media, this led to more interest towards my brand and people messaging asking when they could join the next trips. This fueled my confidence to plan more trips, reassured me that I was creating something in demand, and allowed me to rediscover my love for organizing things. Planning these trips also got me out of my comfort zone as I was not always outgoing and able to make friends quickly. Along with the pressure of making each trip a success, It was sometimes overwhelming. I remember having to work really late on proposals and business pitches for funding, only to be at the airport the next morning at 6 a.m. for a flight. Despite choosing against the benefits of having a business partner to support me, as I had a fear of my previous experience repeating, I took on the role of everything from searching flights, advertising the trips, putting together the itinerary, contacting brands to collaborate with me, and promoting the apparel. At that time, I had no money to hire people to take the load off. Despite this, the feedback from the trips was encouraging. Some described them as being part of a travel club to make new friends and take travel with like-minded people. A community was being created organically. I decided to stretch my skills and organize social events in London, which were also positively received. As a result, in 2019, I organized 13 group trips, three events, which personally is a great achievement, as I had no financial backing and initially doubted anyone would ever show up. 2020 kicked off with a bang. I had concluded the first group trip to Milan and the first event of the year. The next trip would be in March, and I was finalizing details for an event in April. Oblivious to the seriousness of the pandemic, as news reports were mainly in China and Italy, therefore I assumed it was just a temporary phase and certainly the trip would go ahead. Then, week after week, I was waiting for positive news, and suddenly the UK went into lockdown. At first, I was in denial. I genuinely thought it was a minor glitch. We'll be back traveling in a matter of weeks. Reality sunk in that the trip was no longer going ahead when the airline sent a public notice of suspension. I had to communicate this cancellation and refund the joining fee to the six attendees, which was greatly disappointing. As we settled into the lockdown and weeks turned into months, I became anxious about what my business would be as traveling was now forbidden. Suddenly, talking about travel was a taboo and viewed as insensitive during a global pandemic. That's when I decided to suspend my Instagram account, focus on my mental health, and brainstorm ideas on how to pivot my business. On reflection of my journey, having a business partner would have helped to ease some of the pressure. I missed the aspect of working with someone, creative brainstorming, and sharing business successes and milestones. When I first started, I wish I had a mentor and avoid learning the hard way. Knowing what steps to take when it comes to finance and resources wasn't easy, unlike nowadays where there are different organizations ready to help. This led to a few financial mistakes and sometimes relying on connecting with business owners on a similar level who were not always readily available or willing to help. Lastly, not having a clear business plan was a shortcoming. My goals were sometimes blurry as I was trying to do everything without perfecting one service, then moving on to the next. I was more reactive rather than having a strategic plan. If I could do things differently, I would learn the essence of building a team. There's only so many hours in one day one person can devote to a business.